Hello and welcome to Byju's IAS. Let's get started and look into the first article. The first article says Kane Energy wins arbitration award. This article has a very close resemblance to the Vodafone case where the Permanent Court of Arbitration had ruled in favor of Vodafone against the Indian government with respect to the retrospective taxation. What is this Vodafone case has been explained in one of our videos and the link for the same will be provided in our description box. In a similar way, we have the Permanent Court of Arbitration which has now ruled that the Indian government was wrong in applying the retrospective tax on Kane. In its ruling, the International Arbitration Court has said that the Indian government must pay roughly around 8,000 crores in damages to the Kane. In this particular backdrop, let us try and understand what is this dispute all about. Like Vodafone, the dispute between the Indian government and Kane also relates to the retrospective taxation. Back in the year 2006 and 7, as part of internal rearrangement, Kane UK transferred shares of Kane India holdings to Kane India. So what exactly this whole issue about? This is about capital gains tax. So what is this capital gains tax? Let's say for example, we have a capital. What is a capital? It can be a property, it can be an industry, it can be a building. When we are selling this particular capital asset, what we also get is profits. So on the basis of profit that we generate, we are supposed to pay certain amount to the government of India. So that particular amount is what is called as the capital gains tax. In this particular scenario, ideally Keynes Holdings Limited, which was supposed to pay some capital gains to the government of India, had not paid the capital tax, and as a result what we have is the government of India imposing this particular taxation in a retrospective effect. What exactly happened after this particular issue? We have the government of India, and this was a case against Kane as well. So what they approach is the income tax appellate tribunal. Once they head to the income tax appellate tribunal, this goes in favor of the government. So this income tax appellate tribunal requests that Kane has to pay some amount in the form of capital tax to the government. Then it goes to the High Court of Delhi as well, and now the proceedings are being conducted and it is still pending before the Delhi High Court. Because this happens to be one, a taxation issue, the other is about the investment issue. Why? Because this happens to be an investment issue between India as well as United Kingdom. As a result, Kane as a company approaches the Permanent Court of Arbitration. So what does the Permanent Court of Arbitration rule here? The Permanent Court of Arbitration has said that this is not related to tax alone, but this is about a dispute. Since it is about a dispute, they have approached the international arbitration, and now they have ruled in favor of Kane, and they have said that the government in this particular case has breached the guarantee of fair and equitable treatment. It has further gone on to say that all the money taken by the government during this particular proceedings may have to be returned. Why? During the pendency of the arbitration, this company Kane became one of the first companies where the government took action to recover the retrospective tax amount from Kane as a company. So during the pendency of the arbitration, the government sold Kane's near 5% holding in Vedanta Limited, seized dividends totaling about 1140 crore due to it from shareholding, and set off a 1590 crore tax refund against the demand as well. In this particular backdrop, the tribunal has ordered the government to desist any further action against Kane, and has also requested the government to provide back the dividend seized and tax refunds withheld to recover the tax demand. So what is the major impact right now? The major impact is that the government of India is planning to pull companies as well as countries towards India and is wanting to improvise on the ease of doing business. We have controversies with respect to the Vodafone. We recently had labor issues with respect to Wistron, and now we also have the Kane judgment made by the Permanent Court of Arbitration. All these cases reveal that the ease of doing business which the government is planning to enhance is not working effectively in favor of the government. So this will also put the country in a gray area where countries and companies will be hesitant to come and engage in India in order to expand their businesses. So what we have to understand in this particular case is that the ease of doing business can become a major problem when it comes to India, and the investments that the government is expecting may not be tuned up, says this article. And the government has also responded, where the finance ministry has said that it will consider all the options, including the legal options. It wants to study this particular case and see what can be taken up with reference to this article. It is this that we have to understand with reference to this article. But kindly remember, for the rest of the analysis with respect to the Vodafone case, the link will be provided, so kindly look into it. Now let's look into the next article. This article says cabinet not for 100% FDI in DTH service. What is the context? The Union Cabinet has recently approved revised guidelines for the direct to home services, allowing about 100% of the foreign direct investment, as well as increasing the license period for about 20 years. So what is the issue right now? The issue is that FDI with respect to the DTIH is currently at about 49%. This has been enhanced to about 100% by the government of India. Before we understand what are the other features with respect to this particular issue, let's understand the basic principle of what is the DTH. DTH principally stands for direct to home television. What exactly happens? As you can see in the image, you already have something called as a personal dish which is attached on an individual home. So the signals are directly given from the satellites to these dishes, and ultimately we would be able to watch all the channels that we have subscribed to with the help of this direct to home television. So how does it work? Basically, we will have the satellite signals which will be directly taken up by these personal dishes in an individual home. So the TV channels would be transmitted from the satellite to a small dish antenna which is mounted on top of our rooftops in our homes. So the broadcaster will directly be able to connect to the user, and in this particular scenario we don't have to speak to the cable operators. When you look into the earlier scenarios, you had those huge antennas where one particular cable operator used to have it, and he used to transmit the signals to our personal homes as well. So what it required is cables from the cable operator to our personal homes, and this also required amplifiers as signals were transmitted from the cable operators to our homes. And now what we have is the direct signals from the satellite onto these small dishes that are placed in our homes. So the satellites that are used for this particular purpose is the geostationary satellite. Also remember, some of the common DTH providers in India include, as given in this picture, Tata Sky, Sun Direct, and when it comes to the DTH market in India, it is dominated by the Tata Sky, which has more than 30%, followed by Dish TV, which has approximately around 30%. Airtel has about market capture of about 23%, and Sun Direct, which has a capture of nearly 14%. This is just for the information, but what you have to remember is the very concept that the direct to home television is about capturing the satellite signals directly onto these small dishes that are placed on rooftops. What are the other guidelines that which has been accepted by the government? We have the license fee, which has been revised from 10% of the gross revenue to 8% of the adjusted gross revenue. Under the revised guidelines, the license will be issued for a period of 20 years compared to 10 years which was prevalent earlier, and this can also be renewed for a 10-year period as well. Now the license will also be collected on a quarterly basis, not on the annual basis. So what will be the significance of this particular move? Basically, since we will have the better guidelines, longer license period, clarity on the renewals when company can actually go ahead and renew, they have relaxed the FDI limits. This will basically make sure that all the stability that is required in this particular sector will be provided by the government. This will ultimately mean there will be more investments into this particular sector by the foreign investments, and ultimately this will also provide employment opportunities to the people in this particular sector. So the employment opportunities, stability in the sector, and investments are the major significant factor when it comes to this particular article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says the tightrope between production and industrial peace. This article here is speaking about the Wistron issue that happened near Bengaluru, where there were labor violations and vandalism in the state of Karnataka. We did discuss about the background as well, and here our focus would be with respect to the contract workers. Who are these contract workers? When it comes to the contract workers, there are three parties involved in it. Let me explain this for you. In the present scenario, we have what is called as the Wistron, which happens to be the core company. Then there is a contractor in the center, and finally who we have is the contract workers. What exactly happens when it comes to the contract workers? When it comes to the contract workers, you have the basic important company called as the Wistron, which is not paying, or these workers are not on the payroll of the Wistron. So who pays them? Wistron as a company pays it to a second company or a contract company, and it is this company which will pay all the contract workers the payment. So the monthly payment, that which is paid as a form of salary, is not paid by Wistron, but instead it is paid by the contractor. So what exactly happens here? You have the contract workers who will be paid by this intermediate company, but they have to work in Wistron. They will come under the management of Wistron. They will be supervised by this particular company of Wistron, and ultimately all the welfare facilities will also be provided by Wistron. So the contract workers here will not get their salaries directly from Wistron because they are not on the payroll of Wistron. But when it comes to the overall management, how they are working, how much they are working, where they are working, and how much of their work is contributed, that will be decided by Wistron. Now let's look into some of the important statistics as to how many number of people are present as contract workers. According to the annual survey of industries 2017 and 18, contract workers accounted for 36.4% of total production workers in the registered factory sector. Contract workers, when they are taken into a company, often face couple of challenges. What are these challenges? Let's say for example, there is a regular worker and then there is a contract worker as well. When it comes to the regular worker who are under the payroll of Wistron directly and not by a contract company, let's say they are working for 9 hours. So is the contract worker who is working for 9 hours. Let's say when this particular person is doing the same amount of work as a regular worker, and the contract worker would also be doing the same amount of work, but the problem is when it comes to the wages. When it comes to the regular workers, the wages may be comparatively greater, but for the contract worker it might be less. Let's say for example, we are speaking about the social security benefits. Let's say we are speaking about the PF, or let's say for example we are speaking about the insurance. In this particular section, social security benefits would be provided to the regular workers, but that is not provided to the contract workers. And sometimes these contract workers also operate in poor of conditions as well. That happens to be the major drawback when it comes to the contract workers. Now what we have to focus is on issues and concerns when it comes to the contract workers, when it comes to the Wistron issue. Wistron in the present scenario has gone on to assert that it had deposited the money in the account of the contractor. So what is the major issue here? The major issue was about salaries. The major issue was about the salaries being deducted. There were salaries which were slashed from 22,000 to nearly 8,000 in certain cases, which means the salary was not given on time, and at the same time they were reduced as well. So what has Wistron gone on to say? That they have given it to the contractor, but the contractor has not given the same to the contract workers. So who is the major sufferer here? It happens to be the contract workers. Workers were also working in 12-hour shifts as well. Why? Because there was increase in demand for the iPhone products as well as for the other Apple products as well. And as a result, there was increase in demand as well. In order to meet these demand, they had to work in 12-hour shifts as well. Once they started working more and more, they felt very tired. They did not have breaks as well, and they were already monitored by the disciplinarian managers as well. So in this particular backdrop, ideally one would expect that since they are working for 12 hours, they were not getting enough breaks, they were feeling tired, they were supposed to be paid more. But in the present scenario, they were paid really low and little, and they did not have the social security schemes as well. All this meant that they were going through a lot of strain, a traumatic experience, both physical as well as on the mental level. Meanwhile, they did not also have any grievance redressal mechanism as well. This was also discussed in our earlier CNAs as well, where they were not able to report what they are going through. Workers were constantly asking company officials for their dues, but this was not met. Ultimately, this had resulted in vandalism in Wistron as a company. All these issues are in reference to India and with respect to the recent incident. But now let us travel to China. What exactly happens in China? There are incidences where students have also been forced to take up internships to fill shortage in the labor supply and offset the cost as well. They were not paid and they had no obligations to pay for the social protection as well. And since most of these power controlling units are in central government in China and it happens to be an authoritarian regime, there were violations that were reported in China as well. Such is the state where labor reforms which have been initiated in India is not applied, and we all know for the fact that in China, when it is authoritarian regime, there is no call for the voice of the people. As a result, the labor reforms or the labor initiatives have been completely decimated, says this article. So what were the steps that were taken by the government in order to stop such an issue? The government of India did think over it, and it has also come up with what is called as the fixed term employment in the code of the industrial relations. What is this fixed term employment? Basically, they can be directly hired by the employers. In the present scenario, as we discussed, we have Wistron, we have the contractor, and we have the contract workers. But the fixed term employment, that which the government of India has come up with in the code on fixed industrial relations, has said that you, the company, did not have to go by the contractors, but you can directly hire the employees. Why? Because the contractor will become an intermediary, and that is a major problem, says this particular notification. As part of the fixed term employment, they would be provided with same working hours that of the regular as well as for the contract workers. Wages should be same, allowances should be same, and all the statutory benefits will also have to be provided to all these contract workers. This is for the benefit of the employees. So what will be the benefits that will be taken up by the employees? They'll have the same working hours as that of the regular. They did not have to overwork. They'll get same wages. As we initially discussed, they were not getting the same wages, but under the fixed term employment, they'll be getting the fixed wages. Allowance will be the same as a regular worker, and they will also get statutory benefits. So what is there for the companies here? When it comes to the regular workers, they have to give a notification if they are actually relieving that particular person. In case they are actually relieving him, they also will have to provide about 3 months of salary or 2 months of salary, or they also have some statutory laws in book which they have to follow. But in the present scenario, for the fixed term employment in the code of industrial relations, they are not entitled to any termination notice. They need not have to give any prior notice to the contract workers as given to the regular employee. And at the same time, the retrenchment benefits that which was accorded under the regular program need not have to be given under the fixed term employment. So there is advantages both for the employer as well as the employee under the fixed term employment. So what we have is one of the important recommendations that which the government of India had come up under the code on industrial relations. Now the question is, in spite of this particular provision which the government has come up with, why is that the companies are still going ahead with the what is called as the contractor? That is because the cost of hiring, the contract workers continues to remain low in spite of the fixed term employment. Also remember, in case there is a legal dispute between a worker and the company, in the earlier instance of contractor, it will be the contractor company which will bear all the legal consequences and the litigation cost. But when it comes to the fixed term employment, if there is a legal dispute, this legal cost or the litigation cost will be borne by the company which is hiring it. And as a result, most of these companies still go for the contract workers and not for the fixed term employment. So what is the way forward? Ideally, to encourage all the companies to move away from the contract employees towards the fixed term employment, the government should have completely restricted or prohibited that particular company to use the contract labor in the core activities. But what have they done? They have actually allowed all these contract workers to be employed in the core activity. Let me give you an example. Let's say in the present scenario, Wistron happens to be one of the company which is into assembling of the mobiles. So this happens to be a core activity. Ideally, they should not have let contract workers to work in the core activity, that is about assembling of all these mobile equipments. But there are other ancillary activities, let's say for example security of that particular building or catering service. These are the ancillary services. So core activities is where they should ideally make use of fixed term employment, but ancillary activities is where you can hire what is called as the contract workers. If this particular provision was introduced in the code on industrial relations, companies would not have exploited this very provision. So ideally, they should not let the core activities to be given to the contract workers, but instead the ancillary activities like security or for example canteen or any other services apart from the core services should only be restricted to the contract workers. Such a provision, if it is introduced in the near future, will help the government, it will help the employee, and this will also make sure that there is no instability when it comes to the employer as well. It is this that we have to understand with reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says free, fair and safe as the election motto. We have one of the landmark cases called as Indira Nehru Gandhi case, or this is also called as the election case. What was this judgment all about? According to Justice H.R. Khanna, democracy, he says, is a basic feature of the constitution and it also includes free and fair elections. Then this was also confirmed by the Supreme Court in the Kyoto Holohan case and the Kuldeep Nair case, where they have gone on to say that free and fair elections is a very important aspect of democracy. Who will ensure that there is free and fair elections? It is the Election Commission of India. So what does the Election Commission of India do? It makes sure that it maintains law and order during the process of elections and also sets up the election machinery during the conduction of elections. This is what generally happens in the normal scenario. But now we are living during the COVID times. This also means that apart from the free and fair elections, what we also require is the safe conduction of elections by the Election Commission of India. In this particular backdrop, what this article currently goes on to suggest, as much as free and fair elections is part of the basic structure doctrine, what we also have is right to life, which is enshrined under Article 21. That also has to be kept in mind by the Election Commission, says this article. When you look at it generally, what we have is elections that are being conducted in United States of America. Election results were out. Then we have elections in South Korea. We had elections in Sri Lanka, Myanmar, and India also successfully conducted its elections in Bihar as well. So what are we doing here? We are able to take up the call of elections to ensure accountability of the governance when it comes to the free and fair elections. They have brought massive number of people out of the lockdowns, isolation, and what they have done is made sure that they are casting their vote and implementing the idea of political justice. While we ensure political justice, the Election Commission of India will also have to mandatorily make sure that health of all these people are safeguarded. Why is health important? because that is an ingrained aspect of Article 21. We have Justice V.R. Krishna Iyer, who has gone on to say that Article 21 is the procedural Magna Carta protective of life and liberty, which has been elaborated upon in pronouncements of the Supreme Court of India, notably in Sunil Batra versus Delhi administration, where it has held that right to life included the right to lead a healthy life as well. The article in the present scenario has taken up three important measures. It speaks about three important prospective measures that Election Commission of India in the near future has to take up. What are these measures? One, there are personnel who would be employed when it comes to the elections. This can be the security personnel or the booth operator or people who will be managing this entire exercise. So what is required in case we have the vaccine in the near future, these people will have to be vaccinated is the first recommendation given by the author. The second important recommendation is that all those people who are coming up to the election booths to cast their vote, they have to wear the mask compulsorily. So the Election Commission of India has to give a strict guidelines that in case there are people with no mask, such people should be asked to go back, wear a mask and then come back to the polling booth. So one who is not wearing the mask should go back and return wearing one to cast their political mandate. And at the same time, in case there are senior voters in that particular region or in that polling booth, there has to be a separate queue for the senior citizens. Why? Because senior citizens are more susceptible to this particular virus. It can harm them as well. So there has to be a separate queue both for the senior citizens and for the disabled, and at the same time these people should be prioritized first, says this article. So these are some of the important measures that which has to be taking place in the near future when elections will be conducted in couple of states in India, is what this article all about. Now let's look into the next article. This article says beware of illegal digital lending apps, says the RBI. Whenever we have to borrow money, what do? We usually go to the banking channels, or let's say for example the non-banking financial companies as well. These are the ones which are registered with the Reserve Bank of India, and there might be few banks or cooperative banks as well which can be regulated by the state governments under certain statutory provisions. When we are taking or borrowing money from the banking or the non-banking sector controlled by the RBI or by the state, this is under the eyes of these institutions. But if we are taking money from anywhere else, this is not regulated by the Reserve Bank of India. One such scenario that we will be discussing under this article is the unauthorized digital lending platforms as well as mobile applications. What is happening of late? We are living in a digital revolution era where most of the things does happen on the online platforms. In case you want to have your food, you order it on Swiggy or Zomato. In case you want to make a payment, you do it on Paytm or PhonePe or Google Pay. So everything of late is digitized. So we are living in an era where data is the new fuel. And at the same time, there might be people who would have good intentions, but there are also people who will have bad intentions as well. What are these bad intentions? Let's say for example, I am in trouble. I can't go to the bank because it requires a lot of documentational proofs, and it also requires the KYC norms to be fulfilled as well. But I need the money in an emergency scenario. So what do? I approach one of the people like the intermediary or the broker. If there are no brokers who are ready to lend me money as well, what do? I search online using the Google search engine, or I might also find applications which will also provide money to me. So what is happening in the present scenario? There are digital applications which are popular on the social media, let's say for example Facebook or Instagram, and now banned TikTok as well. What do? These digital applications provide services to the people. What are the services? They provide money to the people. So this money can be 10,000 or it can be 60,000 as well. But the problem is that when you have to repay back, they charge exorbitant rates. So the rate of interest will also be having hidden charges as well. These people, when they have to take back the money or they have to recover the money, they also use muscle power as well, and they also misuse the agreements to access data on the mobile phones of the borrower. So the small amounts that which is taken by that particular person will usually have high interest rates. Basically, they go on to these digital platforms. That is because there is no KYC norms that is required, or they are not mandated to provide all the documentations as required under the banking channel. And as a result, there have been instances in the past 1 or 2 weeks where there was a jobless techie who passed away. There was an agricultural extension officer who committed suicide because of the harassment put forward by these digital applications. And as a result of all these incidences, we have the RBI which has stepped up and has come up with certain guidelines. So what are the guidelines and the advice given by the Reserve Bank of India? They have currently gone on to say that consumers should never share any of the KYC documents with unidentified persons, unverified applications, or unauthorized applications which has not been authorized by the Reserve Bank of India. So basically, in case you witness any of such applications which are ready to give money at an exorbitant price, such can also be reported to the law enforcement agencies. It is asking all the individuals and small businesses against falling prey to such growing number of unauthorized digital lending platforms and mobile applications on the promise of getting loans in quick and hassle-free manner, because they are charging more and they have been using our documents for their own purposes. That is why such should not be taken up, says the Reserve Bank of India. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. Now let's look into some of the preliminary practice questions. Consider the following statements about Jallikattu. It is a bull taming sport played in Tamil Nadu and Karnataka. It finds a mention in Sangam literature. Which of the above statements are correct? The answer to this is 2 only. Why? Because this Jallikattu is played in the state of Tamil Nadu and not in Karnataka. Karnataka has its own sport, and that is what is called as Kambala. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. Now let's look into the next practice question. Arrange the following from west to east: Barents Sea, Kara Sea, Laptev Sea, Chukchi Sea. The answer to this is 1, 2, 3 and 4. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. Kindly remember, yesterday I did give you one of the questions. What was the question? Do we have a same habitat naturally present where lion and tiger live in a specific area? Most of you all, yes, they have answered it, and we have Crescent Moon who has given this answer beautifully. What is the whole issue about? Let's say when it comes to the tiger or the lion, they are the apex predators which are present in that particular system. So what is the job of the tiger? It is an apex predator, or it is a top level predator. What is the job of the lion? It is an apex predator. It happens to be a top level predator. If both the lion as well as tiger are present in the same natural habitat, they will fight against each other until one is eliminated or there is migration away from this particular place. So what would happen here? Because the lions and tiger are present in a particular area, they might fight out, and this will lead to the loss of diversity as well. Even if the government wants to introduce one of it in a ecological habitat, the government will never take such a position. Why? Because the ecological niche for the tiger and for the lion is same. So what is the ecological niche? It is a unique functional role, that which is played by that particular animal when it comes to the ecological habitat. So tiger is a top level predator, and we also have lion which happens to be a top level predator. So as a result, both these species will never stay in a same locality. Even if it stays, it can only be in a zoo, as given by one of the students, where he says it is Bannerghatta National Park, but this happens to be a zoo where they are caged. If they have to be present in a natural habitat, they will fight against each other, and ultimately only one will survive. And as a result, what we will have is biodiversity collapse in that particular region. Another simple question, I'll give the answer right away. Who is more stronger? Is it the lion or the tiger? Take a pause and answer in the comment section. The answer is tiger. Whenever it is a fight between the tiger and the lion, in most of the cases, it is tiger who will win over the lion. Now you might ask me a question. Why is the lion called as the king of the forest. That is because of its masculine appearance. But when it comes to the heft and the power, it is tiger which has more power than the lion. Usually, whenever the hunting goes on, it is the lion which goes in group. But when it comes to the tiger, it singly goes, and as a result, it is tiger which is far more powerful. In the present article, we are speaking about Arctic. So what is happening in Arctic? There is ice loss due to climate change, and this is also indirectly contributing for the fall of polar bear population as well. Now another important and a silly question would be, why does the polar bear not eat the penguin? Take a pause, answer in the comment section, and I'll give you the answer. The answer is simple. Polar bear is in the northern hemisphere and we have penguins which are in the southern hemisphere. Ideally, they would be able to eat it, but since their habitats are totally different, one is in the northern hemisphere, the other is in the southern hemisphere, polar bear would not be able to eat the penguins. Also remember, in case if polar bears are introduced in Antarctica or in the southern hemisphere, what we will have is the complete elimination of the penguin. Why is the complete elimination happening? Because such an introduction runs counter to the well accepted principle of natural biodiversity. The natural biodiversity for the polar bear is in the northern hemisphere, and for the southern hemisphere we have the penguins. If the polar bears are introduced in the southern hemisphere, what we will have is the complete extinction of the penguins. Why? Because there is no top level predator when it comes to the penguin, and as a result we would not be in a position to introduce polar bear in the southern hemisphere. This is some of the other points when it comes to the Arctic as well. When it comes to this particular question, we have Barents Sea first, then we have Kara Sea, then we have Laptev Sea, and finally we have the East Siberian Sea and the Bering Sea and the Chukchi Sea as well. So the question is about west to east in the present scenario. So it will be Bering Sea, Kara Sea, Laptev Sea and East Siberian Sea. Now let's look into the next practice question. Which of the following are correctly matched? We have the national park and the state. Nagarhole National Park, Karnataka. Gugamal National Park, Maharashtra. Balpakram National Park, Meghalaya. The answer to this is 1, 2 and 3. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. Now let's look into the next practice question. With reference to medium range surface to air missile tested recently, which of the following statements is or correct? The DRDO has jointly developed the missile in collaboration with Russia Aerospace Industries. The missile targeted an unmanned air vehicle Banshee, which happens to be a British drone. Which of the statements are correct? The answer to this is 2 only. Why is the first statement wrong? That is because it is not Russia, but instead it is Israel Aerospace Industries. Also remember, when it comes to the medium range surface to air missile system, they have a strike range of nearly 100 km. They have 4.5 long nuclear capable ballistic missile which weighs around 2.7 ton and can carry a payload of 60 kg. Apart from the missile, the launching platform also includes a multifunctional surveillance and threat alert radar for detection, tracking and guidance of the missile. The next important point is that the missile has a speed of about Mach 2. Now let's look into the next practice question. In India, the term public key infrastructure is used in the context of digital security infrastructure. Now let's look into the mains practice questions. Discuss the challenges in conducting elections amidst COVID-19 pandemic in India. What measures have to be taken to ensure free, fair and safe elections? Next question. Wistron incident has lessons for the industries and the government. Explain. So please write all your answers in the comment section, peer review and also come up with some constructive criticism. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.